Meaning it wasn't funny enough?
No, I think they could have poked harder and faster.
Hey, I'm Teresa. Welcome to Cocoon Cast, where we deep dive into movies and discuss all things cinema.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. Today we'll be discussing the new movie, The Kill Room.
Rebecca, let's get started.
When Gordon Davis strikes upon a foolproof idea to launder money, his accomplice, Patrice, convinces him to make the con just a little bit more real with actual pieces of art created by Reggie, his underling. One small problem. Reggie has to decide, is he pretending to be an artist, or is he an artist pretending to be a killer?
Rebecca, tell our cinema community why you wanted to see The Kill Room.
The trailers present a very snappy, dialogue-filled, almost poking mercilessly at the subject material. The movie we got, less so.
Less so. So disappointed?
Severely.
Would you say, Rebecca, the trailers were deceiving, or kind of here? That's kind of what I'm hearing you say is like, maybe not quite what I thought it was going to be.
I expected more quick, and the word I'm going to keep using is snappy. I like dialogue that goes back and forth, and it feels natural. It doesn't feel like they're waiting for the other person to kind of pause, react.
You mean like what we're doing right now?
Kind of, yeah.
So a little bit more banter, a little bit snappy, fast.
What I was expecting was kind of a Get Shorty kind of approach.
Yeah. Well, and Uma Thurman and Samuel L. Jackson are both in there, so I think that goes into your mind too, even like kind of like a Pulp Fiction feel.
Yeah, I was expecting definitely a little bit more wit and heft to the wit.
Ooh. I have to agree with you. I was disappointed. The trailers made this movie look quick, and I keep using the word snappy too. Engaging, funny, and you're talking about Uma Thurman, Kill Bill, Pulp Fiction. She has a history in her past of doing some really good movies that are fun.
I was watching Kill Bill the other week with one of my roommates, both parts, and she had more charisma in those movies than she does here.
Let's talk about that. The acting. Pretty decent cast. Samuel L. Jackson, one of our favorites.
Pretty well-rounded cast. Whoever the casting director was, they definitely knew who they were casting for, and they nailed that part quite nicely. The downside is you have scant material to work with. Maybe a little bit more improv would have helped the situation.
Well, and we don't know if there was improv or if people were literally going deep, 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 right, reading it verbatim. I was disappointed with Uma. She felt stiff. And I understand, she's a gallery owner. She's trying to play someone who's, a little bit more uptight, running with a circle that, is a little bit more sophisticated, if you will. And I just had no love for this woman.
That's kind of sad because there are several points in this film where Uma's character, Patrice, is physically threatened, emotionally threatened.
That's true.
Patrice has to make these decisions that threaten her livelihood, as well as her daughter, who is briefly played by Maya Hawke, who our viewers may remember from Stranger Things as Robin.
Right, and that is her real life daughter.
Yes.
And I remember kind of and nudging you in talking about it didn't feel like there was a lot of chemistry, and I just kind of laughed because they're mother-daughter, and you would think, well, maybe even if the script's a little weak, their chemistry will come together. And I just felt like her daughter was underutilized, and it just, again, the chemistry was lacking, the dialogue was lacking to me. Honestly, it felt as if Samuel L. Jackson really was holding the movie together in my mind.
Joe Manganiello did a good bit, but I wanted to see him have more things to work with. You have a character who's really compelling. They want to get out of this environment, and they're starting to question, are they really an artist? I think that's a huge existential crisis for anyone, is your whole life you've been thrust into this situation. Now you start to realize that you have a talent in another area in your life, and you're starting to wonder, is this the person I really am? And I think this could have been weirdly compelling movie in that respect.
Well, and for him to get out of a life of crime.
Yes.
Because that's what he is known for, and ultimately that's what helps facilitate his possible getting out of this life, which is ironic in of itself. And I think the story, not the screenplay, but the story itself, as you said, was compelling. There's a lot of pokes at the art community.
I would never say it's a good piece, but it makes me feel dirty.
What that world looks like. And I guess I was expecting it to be a smarter movie.
I was expecting it also to be a more beautiful to look at movie.
Oh gosh, right, because
I
it's
was
about
so
art.
bored. I do like the attention to detail that went into Reggie's pictures and also 3D installations. I thought that was really cool because I pointed to you, there's a couple winks and nods to some of that stuff.
Yes, that's correct.
Whoever the production designer was nailed that aspect of things. However, just the cinematography, I feel like could have highlighted even the mundane areas in this film to be a more visually enjoyable experience. Instead, I'm just constantly looking everywhere else.
Well, and it felt flat. And I remember after the movie we were talking, and I was talking about the cinematography because that's one area that we particularly pay attention to on Cocoon Cast. And I said, I think one of the most exciting scenes was, the airplane flying overhead and there was like a palm tree. I'm like, oh, they framed that well. And I was like, ooh, that's not good. And I remember one of our team members when we were coming out said it felt like a college project. I would think given the cinematographer, it would have been better seeing his pedigree, seeing the work that he's done. I was disappointed, and the set design, typically that really gravitates, gets my attention. It didn't do much despite, as we were talking about the art installation, there was some art that was interesting, however, not enough to compel me.
There was one really good shot. It's after Patrice finds out the truth about Reggie, so to speak.
Oh, correct.
And I love the shadowing that took place. And it made it very clear to the audience that she felt threatened by Reggie.
Oh,
But you also
correct. We
saw-
were talking about that. There was kind of, it felt Hitchcock.
Yes, I like that, but there's also a softness to Reggie. I think that a more seasoned cinematographer would definitely take the time to highlight. Also, just to give an idea how chaotic this movie is, there's about 9 producers on this movie.
Oh, no. And when let's talk about producers, people. I looked up and Uma Thurman was one of them. And I thought, okay, that's fair enough. She's one of the executive producers. And then there were 8 other ones listed. And I thought, well, okay, fine, there's 8 more. And then I remember when we were watching the end credits, it was like, executive producer. And one of our team members goes, wow, I think there's more producers than there were actors and actresses in this movie. And it surprised me because I'm thinking 8, that's pretty crazy. But then it was 8 plus, and then the executive producers. And I'll be honest, I lost track of that. And I thought, why would there be a need for that many hands in this movie? And maybe that's why it didn't feel quite cohesive.
Well, the interesting thing is there's also several production houses involved with this movie.
That
I
is
remember
true.
you discussing with me that you weren't able to find any information on any of them.
No, and they may be well known, and maybe I missed it. It's Yo Productions and Idiot Savant, which to me is offensive as a name.
Yeah.
However, there may be something to that. Maybe
I would love to know what the reasoning was behind that.
No, that was offensive to me. But I'm not holding that against them. Maybe there's a story that we don't know. Maybe I don't know. But I thought, oof. And then not being able to find anything. I had a hard time. The movie was rated R, extreme language. I mean, F-bomb, 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 F-bomb.
It's not a Tarantino movie, but it is noticeable.
To me, it distracted from the opportunity to actually have a screenplay that was cohesive.
I'm also curious if our cinema community also recognizes this when they're seeing movies. This movie was an hour and 38 minutes.
Correct.
But it felt like no time had passed at all. And yet, all of a sudden, the movie's over. And I'm not talking no time had passed at all, like I'm enjoying this movie. It feels like the characters are almost stuck in the same situations that we found them in.
Well, and you like growth in movies. You like growth in characters. You like closure at the end, if at all possible.
Well, if a character is going to stay the same, I want an emotionally sound reason for it.
That's a fair statement. Well, and I would love to hear from our cinema community. I was excited that Uma Thurman and Samuel L. Jackson were coming back together, right? Pulp Fiction. I'm like, yeah. And I would love to hear, were they excited too? Are they excited about this movie? Are they going to go see this movie? I was disappointed, and I feel like I'm just, disappointed. But there were so many parts that I wanted to like the storyline, as you said, reasonably smart, wanted to like it. And I just didn't feel like it, like you said, it didn't feel like it moved the needle, and it didn't go very far.
There's a lot of opportunities for different character actors. I know Debbie Mazar was a small bit part in this.
Sure, and you liked her in that.
I like her in general, yes. And I just feel like that this movie is not living up to what it could be.
Do we have any questions from the box?
This movie's been billed as a thriller, a comedy, a dark comedy. What genre do you think it really ended up being, and do you think it did it well?
I think this is more of a dark comedy, but I don't think it has enough material to stick the landing.
Meaning it wasn't funny enough?
No, I think they could have poked harder and faster.
That's what she said? Oh, stop over there. I knew as soon as you said that. I know, as soon as she said that, I thought, oh, we're losing the box right there. Okay, here we go. You ready? I would agree with the sentiment as a dark comedy. However, I use the term comedy loosely because it wasn't funny to me. It was, ironic. It was a little sardonic, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, that's so funny. Oh, I'm like, oof, no.
I was chuckling a little bit at some parts because I felt like the setup could have been good.
Yes.
I felt like they could have gone further, but instead they stopped at the bare minimum.
Do we have any other questions from the box?
When playing video games and there's teenagers in the chat, they usually, because they don't have a good command of the language, they don't know how to be witty. They basically F-bomb after literally every word. Like, I went F into the effing tunnel and I effing shot the effing guy and da-da. This movie did the same thing in several scenes. Did you feel like a teenager wrote this movie who didn't know how to be witty? Or did you think it was effective the way they did the dialogue?
I think it felt like a 10-year-old wrote this movie, and not because of the language. I feel like
how many 10-year-olds do you know are dropping F-bombs?
I know a few.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. Okay, then.
I would say a 10-year-old wrote this because it's like, oh, this thing happened. This is so ironic.
Ooh.
I felt like they could have taken the jokes further. And I feel like this is the kind of film that could lend itself to vicious, biting satire. Instead, I got fish nibble.
Well, and I'm still hung up on the 10-year-olds using F-bombs. Like, wow.
Your inner mom's coming out.
My inner mom comes out and goes, what are you doing with your kids? But I would say it's interesting to compare it to video games and the F-bombs. And I understand language is part of our culture, and some, cuss words and all that. That's part of the dialogue for some movies. I understand that too. And I'm not trying to be overly critical of that, although I don't appreciate that. I understand that for some screenplays and some screenwriters, that is just part of what happens. So I'm not criticizing it just for that. We saw Dumb Money recently, and it felt more integrated in...
It felt pretty seamless in Dumb Money.
Well,
it felt like it was part of the environment in Dumb Money.
It did, and it was a bit much for me. However, it did work for the sake of the screenplay and the dialogue. I would say it felt authentic and real. This felt a little, the term lazy writing?
Shoehorned. I would say shoehorned.
Okay.
They're trying to give this film an edge where there is none, and language can often be a shortcut to that.
And that's a fair statement. And if they're trying to keep it under time, maybe that's part of it, is just throw this in here and there. But it didn't work for me.
I would say do more character work than cuss.
Let us like you, and then, unravel a bit. But no, I agree. I just was really struggling with it. And like we had said just in the beginning, I wanted to like it. I liked the premise. I liked the story. I thought, oh, it could be smart. And like you said, the satire and the art community, it could have been a pretty great movie. And it just turned out to me to not be a great movie, and unfortunately disappointing. Rebecca, it is that time where I have 5 flying moths.
They're not going to like me today.
Uh-oh. They're wondering where to go, which way to go. So on a scale 1 to 5 moths, what would you say your rating is for this movie?
This is a lone moth movie.
Oh, 1. So 4 went away.
4 went away.
All right. Number 1 reason for a 4. Or excuse me. Whoa.
No.
You're like, whoa, hey. Number 1 reason for a 1.
Number 1 reason for 1 moth. It felt like this whole movie feels like an afterthought. And there's like all these little twisted gems of good ideas. But when I'm stuck pondering, is this even real to you? What do you want me to focus on? It just feels like a rough draft of a movie.
That's actually a really good description. I like that. And so, do you think it's worth a watch?
No, this is for a very specific hyper niche audience. And this is the audience that basically my AP history teacher would make fun of. If you don't like modern art, watch this movie. It's hilarious. If you do like modern art, it's cheeky, but not nearly enough.
My moths are back. 1 to 5.
They flew in.
They flew in. So 1 to 5 for me. I would say 1 and a wing. So 1.5. Slightly above yours, just for the sake of they had a great idea in my mind in terms of for a comedy. It was interesting. Didn't execute it well, but there is something to be said for the idea. I also think Samuel L. Jackson really took the movie over in a really great way. And his acting, he committed to the bit. He was on it the whole time. And I think that's definitely worth a wing. Is it worth a watch? Maybe a rental. But even then, if there's a movie that you need to skip or would prefer to skip, I would say this is probably that one this season.
I definitely think with some extra TLC, this could have been a good movie.
I would agree. Thanks for joining us. We're always excited to create experiences to bring our cinema community together.
Watch the notifications for our next review. Then come back to the channel this Saturday for our weekly show, Movies and More, where we will have more movie reviews, the latest Hollywood news, and commentary with Snark, meant to amuse.
Please remember to like, subscribe, and to share our channel.
If you enjoyed this movie review, you might click the link to check out our review of the rockumentary Carlos, or click the other link to watch last week's show, where we reviewed the 4K re-release of Stop Making Sense.
Remember, cinema community, movies are better together. Thanks for watching. See you in the next review.